Okay. Okay, lesson and you topic 8. In this topic, we have 3 lessons. Lesson 1, movement in space. Lesson 2, Earth's movement in space and phases and eclipses. Okay, lesson 1 اللي بحكي اللي يعني دائما الشيء اللي بحكي عنه please بتركزوا عليه at the beginning. In anytime I want you to focus on the definitions, concepts. The concepts or definitions are important for me. يعني you should know what is a satellite, what is a star, what is a planet, what is a meteor, what is a comet, constellation, geocentric model, heliocentric model, eclipse. All of these are very, very important, okay? All of these are very important. You should memorize them. اوكي طبعا انا ما راح حتى نكون واضحين ما راح اجيب لك زي زمان انه الساتلايت اكتب لي شو لا انا بجيب لك multiple choice مثلا something that revolves around a planet. Okay, an object that revolves around a planet وبعطيك A, B, C and you should choose the correct answer. Okay, again, always focus on the vocabulary. Vocabulary are very important. Is very important. Okay. So first, what is a satellite? Let's start with the first one. A satellite is a body that orbits a planet. The moon, Earth's moon, for example, is a satellite, and you can see it every day in the night sky. Okay. Other planets in the solar system, most of them have moons. For example, Mars have 2 moons. Jupiter, I think, has 62 moons. So a satellite is a body that orbits a planet. What is a star? It's a giant ball of superheated. Superheated means very hot gas or plasma composed of hydrogen and helium. The sun that you see every day, it is a star. It's an example of star. By the way, sun is not the largest star, as many people think. There are many stars or a lot of stars that are much bigger than the sun. By the way, the sun is a medium-sized star. There are many stars that are smaller than the sun, and there are also many stars that are larger than the sun. So a star is a huge body or giant ball of superheated gas or plasma. It is composed of hydrogen and helium. These are 2 gases or 2 elements that make up the sun. طيب. So star, satellite, a planet. What is a planet? It's an object that orbits the sun. Okay. How many planets there are or are there in our solar system? Do you know?
8.
Yes, there are. This is the answer. There are 8 planets in our solar system. Okay, there are 8 planets in our solar system. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So it's an object, planet is an object that orbits the sun. It's large enough to have become rounded by its own gravity and has cleared the area of its orbit of any debris. So all the planets have almost a rounded shape. Okay, طيب. What is a meteor? It is a streak of light produced when a small piece of rock or ice known as meteoroid burns up as it enters Earth's atmosphere. What is a comet? It's a cold mixture of dust and ice that develops a long trail of light as it approaches the sun. These definitions and concepts are very important. This is a comet, by the way. I think it's Halley's comet. Okay, Halley's comet. And comets seldom appear in the night sky. Some of them appear only once every 75 years. Okay, so you seldom see comets. Constellations. These are constellations. They are patterns or patterns in the sky, in the night sky. A pattern. This pattern is made by stars. A pattern or a group of stars that people imagine represent a figure, animal, or object are called constellations. Okay. طبعا often as in ancient Roman and Greek cultures, constellations supported specific mythologies. طيب. Now movement in the sky. Why there are seasons. لا هذول عم بحكي عن movements تبعت constellations. Nothing important here. Okay. Now, please, this topic or this subject, the models of the solar system are very important. This subject is very important. We have two models, the geocentric model and the heliocentric model. Heliocentric model. Who can tell me what is the difference between them? What is the difference between geocentric model and the heliocentric model? The geocentric model is simply
the Earth is the sun.
Say it louder, please.
The sun is the center.
Which one?
The geocentric, the Earth is the center.
Yes,
and
thank you. Thank you very much. The geocentric from the word G in Greek language, or the Greek word for means earth. So it is earth-centered model. In this model, people in the past, many early observers, I am talking about thousands of years ago, the Greek philosopher, one of them, Aristotle, many people, many observers, the most famous one of them, Aristotle, thought in the past, they thought Earth was the center of the universe, which means, according to this model, people in the past thought that Earth was the center of the universe. And since G means Earth, so it is called geocentered model or Earth-centered model. Geocentric model or Earth-centered models. According to this model, it is thought that people thought that the Earth was the center of the universe with all the planets, stars circling it. But by the way, do you think that this is true? No, it's not true. It is it's wrong. And by the way, يعني زمان كانوا اللي كان يحكي على غير هيك كانوا يعني يتعاقب. تصدقوا انه كانوا الناس تغلط عليه ويعتبروه مجنون او الى اخره. الان the heliocentric model from the word helios. Helios in Greek means sun. So it is sun-centered model. Okay, sun-centered model or heliocentric model. According to this model, according to this model, in a heliocentric system, Earth and other planets revolve around the sun. يعني people now, or most, the scientific research or in science, the heliocentric model is accepted, and Allah أعلم ممكن يجي in the future scientists who discover that this is not true, but till now it is accepted and it is true because it explains everything around us. The heliocentric model explains the seasons, the year, why we have day and night, why we have seasons, and so on. So the heliocentric model now means the sun is the sun, yes, is the center of the universe, and Earth and other planets revolve around the sun. Okay, many scientists, of course, developed this model, like Copernicus, Brahe, and Kepler, and so on. Okay. طيب, you don't need to read this paragraph. Is it finished? Okay. خليني, let's go to the next lesson. Let me share the screen with you. Lesson 2. Okay, wait a minute, please. Do you have any comments or any questions about lesson 1?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Right, thank you. Yeah. It is loading, I think. Okay. Is it loaded? Is it opened?
I can't see. مش شايف شيء.
فتح عندكم ولا لا؟ Can I start? Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. طيب again I'm sorry يعني على فكرة أنا لما صورت لك الليسون هذا ما كانش للأسف التصوير واضح. Anyway, as I told you, the vocabulary, you should focus on the vocabulary: axis, rotation, revolution, orbit, solstice, equinox, gravity, law of universal gravitation, and inertia. All of these words are very important. All of them are very important. Okay. The first thing I want you to know how Earth moves. There are two types of movements of Earth: rotation and revolution. But before that, we must learn about the axis, Earth's axis. Earth has an axis, which is an imaginary line. Okay, it is an imaginary line. What does it mean? Imaginary, that this line just you find this line on the map. Okay, it's not actual line. It's an imaginary line that passes from the North Pole through the Earth center to the South Pole. Okay, and this axis is tilted. It's not straight. Okay, you can see the Earth's axis here. This is the axis of the Earth. As you see, it is tilted, and it from the North Pole through the center to the South Pole, and Earth rotates around its axis. We call it Earth rotation. So Earth has an axis, which is an imaginary line that passes from the North Pole through the Earth center to the South Pole, and this line is known as Earth's axis, and the spinning of Earth on its axis is called rotation. This is another important definition, that the spinning the spinning of Earth on its axis, it's called rotation. It's called what? Rotation. Okay. And of course, because of Earth rotation, we have the day, or 24 hours. It takes, we call it a day. So we have day because the day and night as a result of Earth rotation. Earth takes, I forgot to do that, it takes Earth about 24 hours to rotate once. So one rotation of Earth takes 24 hours or 1 day. As you see, this is the Earth rotation. Okay, Earth spins on its axis, rotating from west to east. Okay, which causes day and night. Bye. The second type of Earth movement, or Earth's movement, is called revolution. Revolution is the movement of one object around another. Earth revolves around the sun. Mars revolves around the sun. Mercury revolves around the sun. Venus, and so on. All planets revolves around the sun. Okay, revolution. One revolution of course, Earth takes 365 days or 1 year for Earth to complete one rotation. Of course, the revolution of other planets is different from Earth. Some planets revolves around the sun in a shorter period, and other planets revolves around sun. It takes longer time for them to revolve around the sun. Okay, what is an orbit? Earth's path. Like other planets, Earth's path or orbit around the sun is an ellipse or oval shape. Okay, so the planets or all planets like Earth have an orbit or path around the sun. طبعا, as I told you, one revolution of Earth around the sun takes 1 year or 365 days. طيب. Why we have seasons? There are two reasons for this: because of Earth revolution around the sun, and because of the tilt. The Earth axis is tilted. Okay, seasonal differences in temperature are dependent on the tilt of Earth axis. Okay, so because of Earth revolution and because of the Earth axis is tilted, we have seasons. Okay. As you see here, for example, if this is the sun, and here in the northern hemisphere, as you see, when the northern hemisphere faces the sun, we have summer in June in the northern hemisphere. And as you see, the dark side of the Earth here is the southern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere in June faces away from the sun, so it receives less amount of sunlight, and it is winter there. December, the opposite happens in December. Look, this part of Earth, it is the southern hemisphere. When the southern hemisphere faces the sun, it is summer here or there. So in December, we have summer in the southern hemisphere and winter in the northern hemisphere, the part of Earth that we live on. Jordan lies in the northern hemisphere, and as you know, in December we have winter. In the March and September, there is no sphere is directly, the sun or the two spheres receives the same amount of sunlight, so the temperatures are there's no winter and no summer. We have in March, for example, in the northern hemisphere, it is spring, and at the same time it is autumn in the southern hemisphere. In September, in the northern hemisphere, we have autumn or fall, and in the southern hemisphere it is spring. Now we have solstices and equinoxes. What is a solstice? It is the solstice. In each hemisphere, there is 1 day per year when the sun appears highest in the sky. Each of these days is called solstice. I want you to know that we have the
أستاذ,
أيوة تفضل.
is June 21 the longest day?
In the northern hemisphere.
Yes, yes.
طيب, there is summer solstice. Okay. Summer solstice. The summer solstice, it is in June 21 in the northern. Just I want to write it. N means northern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, we have the summer solstice. It is in June or in June 21, or on June 21. At the same time, June 21, it is winter solstice, but where? Yalla, where? It is in the southern hemisphere.
Southern hemisphere.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Okay. What happens in December 22? Okay. in December 22, it is what happens in the northern hemisphere. We have winter solstice. And at the same time, it is summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. طلع شباب، يعني باختصار شهر 6 احنا كمان كمان اقول لك كمان تقريبا 23 days راح يكون عندنا summer solstice. راح يكون عندنا السمر solstice. هون جوردن you can notice this بتبلش عندنا بسموه السولستس الانقلاب الصيفي. بنفس الوقت بهذا جون 21 بيكون عندهم countries in the southern hemisphere بيكون عندهم winter solstice، يعني بيكون عندهم بداية الشتاء. الآن زي مثلا أرجنتينا، برازيل، هذول الدول هاي الساذرن هيمسفير بيكون عندهم شتوية هس، ماشي؟ لما تصير عندنا صيف. بالعكس بصير عندنا بالشتوية لما تكون احنا شتوية شهر 12 السمر الوينتر سولستس بيكون عندهم سمر سولستس، ماشي؟ اوكي خلينا نرجع للكتاب. So solstices occur when either the northern or the southern hemisphere is at its strongest tilt toward the sun. Halfway between the solstice, neither hemisphere is tilted. Each of these days is called equinox. Okay, when neither hemisphere is tilted toward the sun, which means equal night. This day occurs when the sun passes directly overhead at the equator at noon. Okay, now look at the last paragraph. The solstices and equinoxes occur at the opposite times on the northern. As I told you, they happen at different or opposite time. Okay, in the northern hemisphere, okay, the summer solstice occurs when, June 21, as I told you. And the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, it is around December 22. So in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice is June 21, the winter solstice, December 22, and you can just, the opposite of it happens in the southern hemisphere. طيب, look, however, in the southern hemisphere, these dates are opposite of what they are in the northern hemisphere. يعني, in the southern hemisphere, you can say that the summer solstice occurs in December 22. In the southern hemisphere, winter solstice occur in the June 21. Or you can memorize it أسهل لك. In the southern hemisphere, summer winter solstice happens in June 21, summer solstice December 22. عكس northern hemisphere. Equinoxes occur in both the northern hemisphere and the southern and northern hemisphere at the same time, يعني September 22 and March 21. But here in September 22, it is autumn in the northern hemisphere and spring in the southern hemisphere. March 21, it is spring in the northern hemisphere and autumn in the southern hemisphere. Now gravity, it's very important. What is gravity? It is a force of attraction between all objects, not only between the sun and earth, not only between earth and us. It's a force of that attracts all objects toward each other. Okay, every object, according to the law of universal gravitation or Newton's law of universal gravitation, every object in the universe attracts every other object. Okay, I am attracted now to the laptop. The laptop also attracts me. The laptop attracts me, and I also attract the laptop, and so on. But you can't feel this because we have smaller masses. So gravity is the force of attraction between all objects, or the force that attracts all objects together to each other. The law of universal, or Newton's law of universal gravitation, states that every object in the universe attracts every other object. The force of gravity depends on two things: the mass and the distance. Okay, the force of gravity between two objects depend on the mass. More massive objects exerts larger gravity. Okay, and I want to remind you that mass is the amount of matter in an object. Because Earth is so massive or so large, it exerts a much greater force on you than your textbook. So the greater the masses, the greater the force of gravity. The distance between the two objects, gravity is also affected by the distance. Now, between the two objects, okay, the distance, the force of gravity decreases as the distance increases. Okay, and when the objects are closer, the force of gravity is greater. Finally, inertia also, it's very important. It is the tendency of an object to resist a change in motion. It is the tendency of an object to resist a change in motion. Inertia depends on the mass. The greater the mass of the object, the greater its inertia. So, and the more difficult to start or to stop the object. Okay, inertia is the tendency of an object to resist a change in motion. Okay, the more mass an object has, the greater its inertia. For this reason, it is hard for you, for example, to push a car, because it has very large mass, so it has a greater inertia. But it is easy for you to push a chair, because it has less mass, so it has less inertia. So an object with a greater inertia is more difficult to start or stop. I think that, is there anything else? No, it's here, it's not important. This is the end of lesson 2. خلينا quickly ضايل معنا 10 minutes نعمل فيهم lesson 3. طيب, wait a minute, let me share the screen. Okay, sorry. Do you have any comments, شباب؟
No, thank you, teacher.
الامتحان أي ساعة حكيت لكم؟
Today
الساعة 3:30. 2:30 سوري.
2:30 yes.
2:30 أتوقع أنا كتبت لكم. على كل حال بكرة I will remind you. ما بدي إياكم تكونوا ستريسد للامتحان. عادي امتحان سهل جدا زيه زي الفيرست، زي السكند. في مالتيبل تشويس، في أسئلة فيها شرح، لكن كله inside the book. كله inside the book، كله we mentioned it. طيب, متى بتخلصوا إن شاء الله امتحاناتكم؟
9/6.
يلا إن شاء الله best wishes for you. Phases and eclipses, again and again, always focus on the vocabulary. Phase, eclipse, umbra, penumbra, tide, spring tide, and neap tide. All of these are important words. Okay, خلينا نشوف شو في عندنا هون. طيب, this page حكيت لكم شوف البيج اللي بعدها. Okay, the different shapes of the moon, the appearance of the moon, the different shapes of the moon you see are called phases. Moon has phases or different shapes. Sometimes you see it is as a circle, sometimes you don't see at all, and so on. These are called phases, the shapes of the moon you are seeing. But here, this is one of the moon phases. على فكرة هاي بتكون بداية الشهر. هاي الفيز هذا شو أول، إذا لاحظتوا أول العيد بعد ما انتهى رمضان أو بعد 2-3 بيكون هيك شكل المون. طيب. Okay, motions of the moon, the same thing. of Earth, the moon has two types of movement, rotation and revolution. The moon, like Earth, rotates and revolves. And the moon rotates once on its axis in the same time that it takes to revolve once around Earth. So a day on the moon is the same length as a year on the moon. And as you know, it takes almost 29.5 days, or roughly speaking, you can say 30 days for the moon to complete one rotation and one revolution. One rotation on its axis and one rotation on its own axis and one revolution around Earth. Okay, as you know that the moon is the Earth's satellite. Remember that the sun always, as I told you, it lets half of the moon, okay? And you always see, but because the moon orbits Earth, the part of the lit surface that is visible from Earth changes. And again, the phase of the moon you see depends on how much of the sunlit side of the moon faces Earth, okay? Phases of the moon, طبعا you know all of these are the phases of the moon. Hi home, can you see? This is the new moon. Then you see more at the new moon. As you see, the moon is between Earth and the sun. During this phase, the moon is in the middle between the sun and the Earth, and we don't see anything of the moon. As you see, the dark side of the moon faces Earth. So in this phase, you don't see anything of the moon. Look here, let's talk about the phases. Phases of the moon are phases of the moon. This subject is very important. During the new moon phase, the moon is between Earth and sun, as you see in the figure in the picture. The side of the moon facing Earth is dark, and the opposite side of the moon is facing the sun. Okay, now the moon continue its orbit or its motion around Earth. As moon revolves around Earth, the side of the moon you see gradually becomes more illuminated by direct sunlight. So here, as you see, at the beginning, the dark star or the dark part of the moon faces the Earth, and the illuminated side that faces the sun. So we don't see anything from the moon. Then the moon orbits the Earth and continue to move. So then you see more and more of the moon. Then we reach this phase, which is called first quarter moon. Okay, the first quarter moon, and you see part of the illuminated or half of the lit side. Okay, in the first quarter moon, after about a week, the angle formed of the sun, the moon, and the Earth is about 90 degrees, which is called right angle. Notice here, when in the first quarter moon, the sun, the moon, Earth, and the sun, look, the sun, the Earth, and moon form a right angle. Okay, a right angle. Or yes. طيب. So this is called the first quarter moon. In this phase, the moon, sun, and Earth, the sun, moon, and Earth is about, they make or form an angle that is 90 degrees. طيب, and it is half lit and half dark. So you see the half of the lit part of the moon. About half the way through the moon's revolution, you see the full sunlit side of the moon. In this case, or in this phase, we have a full moon. Okay, here in this phase, this is the full moon. As you see, that in this phase, the part, the Earth now is between the sun and the moon, and the all illuminated part, or you see the full illuminated part of the moon here in this phase. It is the full moon. Okay. So the full sunlit side of the moon called the full moon. Okay, you see the full sunlit side of the moon. About a week later, then the moon continue to move, and you see less and less part of the moon until we reach the third quarter moon here. As you see half of the lit part of the moon, and finally we have new moon, and the cycle repeats. Okay, so about a week later, the sun is shining on the other half of the moon, creating a third quarter moon. At this time, you see half of the lit side. After, look at the time, it takes almost 29.5 days. The patterns begin again, and the new moon occurs. So the moon phases take 29.5 days. Another important thing in this lesson, it is the eclipses. Okay, eclipses. What is an eclipse? It is when an object in space comes between the sun and a third object. It cases a shadow on the third object, causing a eclipse. الآن يا شباب ظل السودان والمصر راح أبعث لكم كمان لينك. ماشي؟ راح أبعث كمان لينك. يلا، goodbye.